Bright Duty. Every student matters.
Hello dear students, welcome to another lecture. So we have been doing with the diary of young girl and Frank, and we've been discussing the pages that she had written in her diary, reading about the experiences that she along with her family had in that secret annex, the fear that they were living with 24/7, the kind of, thoughts and emotions that they were going through round the clock. And we can very well understand the problems that they were facing, being inside that hidden place, preventing themselves from being discovered by anyone. So day and night they were in a problem, and they were just trying and hoping and praying that they would make through this war without being hurt. So today we are going to begin with 13th of January 1943. So a new year, and with a new year we get new hopes. So let's see whether the year proved to be better for them or worse. So terrible things are happening outside. At any time of night and day, poor helpless people are being dragged out of their homes. They are allowed to take only a small bag and a little cash with them, and even then they are robbed of these possessions on the way. So she writes that terrible things are happening outside. Terrible, we all understand, very bad. So outside, the environment, the kind of atmosphere, the war atmosphere that was prevailing, that was getting worse day by day. So it was becoming difficult for people to survive, the Jewish people to survive. She says that at any time of the day, poor, helpless people who were not in a position to do anything or to say anything, they were being dragged out of their homes, dragged out forcefully. They were being taken out of their homes. They were only allowed to take a small bag and little cash with them. And those belongings also that they took along with themselves were robbed on the way. Possessions means these things that belonged to them, that is this little bag and the cash that they would take along. So though they would take it from home, but on the way they were robbed of, this was stolen from them. Families are torn apart. Men, women and children are separated. Children come home from school to find that their parents have disappeared. Women return from shopping to find their houses sealed, their families gone. The Christians in Holland are also living in fear because their sons are being sent to Germany. Everyone is scared. Every night hundreds of planes fly over Holland to drop bombs on German cities. Every hour, hundreds or maybe even thousands of people are being killed in Russia and Africa. The entire world is at war, and even though the Allies are doing better, the end is nowhere in sight. So, what happened basically? As I told you that it was getting bad day by day. The families are torn apart. Torn apart, they were being separated from each other. The men, women and children, they were all getting separated from one another. Children, they come home from school and they see that their parents have disappeared. They were nowhere to be seen. The parents had been taken away. The women, they returned back from shopping and they saw that their houses were sealed. We all understand the meaning of sealed. So they were sealed and nobody was allowed to use them, to live in them from there, thereafter. So the houses were sealed, their families were gone. So the families had left, nobody was there in the house. The Christians, now not only the Jews were in danger, but the Christians who lived in Holland, they also were in fear. Why? Because their sons were being sent to Germany. Now, why do you think the sons of these Christian sons were sent to Germany? So that they would also become a part of this battle. They would become a part of this war from the German end and would help them. So everyone was scared. Every night there were hundreds of planes which were fly over Holland to drop bombs on the German cities. So all the German cities were being targeted. The bombs were being dropped day and night. Anytime anything could have happened. Every hour, hundreds or maybe even thousands of people are being killed in Russia and Africa. So every hour there were hundreds of people or maybe even thousands of people who were killed in Russia and Africa. The entire war, the entire world was at war. And even though the Allies are doing better, the end is nowhere in sight. So although the Allies, the people from the other side, they were doing better at the war, but there was no end that could be seen. It was not expected that this war would come to an end anytime sooner. As for us, we are luckier than millions of people. It's quiet and safe here, and we are using our money to buy food. We are so selfish that we talk about after the war and look forward to buying new clothes and shoes. But actually, we should be saving every penny to help others when the war is over. So Anne tells us that as far as we are concerned, Anne Frank and her family and the people who were living with them, so as they were concerned, they were obviously luckier as compared to the millions of people who were suffering outside. It was very quiet, it was very peaceful, it was very safe inside the secret annex. And whatever food they had, they were using, their money to buy that food. And Anne says, she actually comments on her own people, the people who were living in secret annex, that I think we are a little selfish because we are thinking about after the war. She says that although we are still in the middle of the war, living in that secret annex, but we've started thinking about the time that we will have after the war. We've started thinking about buying new clothes, buying new shoes. But actually, she says that we should have this in mind, that whatever penny that we have, whatever smallest amount of money that is that we are able to save, we should do it so that we can help the ones who are in need once the war gets over. The children in this neighborhood run around in thin shirts and wooden shoes. They have no one to help them. Things have gotten so bad that they stop passers-by in the streets to beg for a piece of bread. I could spend hours telling you about the suffering the war has brought, but I'd only make myself more miserable. All we can do is wait as calmly as possible for it to end. She further tells us that, in that secret annex, the place where it was located, in its neighborhood, in its surroundings, when she would see, she saw that there were children who wore very thin shirts, despite it being very cold. The kids would wear very thin shirts and wooden shoes, and they would just keep on roaming around here and there, and there was nobody who would help them. At times, she says that, the things were so bad that they would beg the passers-by, the people who would pass from in front of them. They would at times beg those passers-by to give them some food and some bread, So Anne says that I can just spend hours in telling you how bad the things were. She says that this war had brought along with itself a lot of problems, a lot of sufferings, and I can tell you so many things about it. But if I do that, it is going to be very miserable for me. I am going to feel bad. I am going to feel very depressed and sad. So she said that the only alternative that we have, the only possibility that we have is to be very calm and to wait for this war to come to an end. Okay. So 27th February 1943, Pym is expecting the invasion by the Allies any day now. Churchill has been ill but is slowly getting better. There's a new division of butter in the annex. Each person is to get their portion on their own plate. The distribution is very unfair. The Van Dans, who always make breakfast for everyone, give themselves a lot more butter than they do to us. My parents are much too afraid of an argument to say anything. So Pym, as we have read earlier, is the father of Anne Frank. So he was expecting that the Allies, the people who were fighting with the Nazis, would invade any time soon, that they are going to attack and, challenge these Nazis any day. Then it is written that Churchill has been ill, but he was getting better. Now, who is Churchill? As it is given in the footnote, it is the Winston Churchill who led the British government during the World War II. So, Winston Churchill, who was the leader of the British government at the time of the Second World War. So, although he was unwell, but he was recovering soon. Anne also tells us that there is a new rule that had come up in the secret annex, which was that the butter was to be divided in a new way now. Remember, we had read this, that extra butter was given to each one of them during the Christmas when we read the account for 22nd December. That the butter was given to each one of them and they all planned to make something using their share of butter. So now we are reading about the 27th of February when she tells us that the rule says each person is going to be given their share of butter in the plate, in which they are eating food. According to Anne, this division was very unfair, because the breakfast was prepared by Van Dans, the family of Van Dans, and these people would always give more butter to themselves rather than giving it to the Franks. But she says that my parents were very afraid. They did not want to strike any argument. Now, obviously, striking an argument, and that too at that, position, you never know, that argument might have led to something more serious. So, they did not want that to happen. So, Anne Frank's parents, they did not say anything about it and they were quiet about the same. 10th March 1943. So, last night the guns were booming away until dawn. I still haven't gotten over my fear of planes and shooting, and so I crawl into father's bed nearly every night for comfort. I know it sounds childish, but wait till it happens to you. The guns make so much noise you can't hear your own voice. Another night we were all woken by strange noises inside the annex. Peter went to the attic with a torch, and what do you think he saw? A whole lot of big rats. So, she tells us about the 10th of March. She told us that last night, that is the 9th March, there were the sounds of guns booming away until dawn. And dawn means early morning. The early morning before the sun rises. So the entire night booming away means the sound, the noise that the shooting, creates. So the gunshots could be heard the entire night. She tells us that she was so fearful of those planes and, the gunshots that she actually crawled to her father's bed. Just like a little child, she went to her father's bed and she slept next to him so that she would feel better and comfortable. She tells us that you might feel that it was very childish. I am a grown-up girl. I am a teenager now, but I'm still going to sleep next to my parents because I'm scared. So she said that might seem childish, but wait until it happens to you. It is only in the worst of situations when you feel scared and you realize that you need comfort. And what could have been more worse than the war that they were all stuck in? She tells us that the noise of the guns was so bad that you could not hear your own voices. Then another night she tells us that other than the voices and other than the noises that were coming from outside the annex, that is the gunshots, strange noises could be heard from within the annex as well. Now, obviously, they were very scared. Peter went to the attic with a torch. Attic, we have read, over. It says the storeroom. So, Peter, he went to the attic, to the storeroom with a torch in his hand. And what did he see? He saw big rats. There were a lot of big rats there. Now, Friday, 2nd April 1943. Last night, I was lying in bed, waiting for Father to say my prayers with me. Mother came into the room, sat on my bed and asked very gently, "Anne, Daddy isn't ready. Shall I say your prayers with you tonight?" "No, Mommy," I replied. Mother got up, stood beside my bed for a moment and then slowly walked towards the door. Suddenly she turned and her face was full of pain. She said, "I don't want to be angry with you. I can't make you love me." A few tears slid down her cheeks as she left. So, last night, that is the 1st of April, Anne tells us that she was there in her bed. She was waiting for her father to say the prayers before they would go off to sleep. So her night prayers, she was waiting her father to come to her room so that they would pray and then she'd sleep. So it was her mother who came into her room. She sat on her bed and very gently, very kindly, very lovingly, she said that, "Anne, Daddy is not ready. So is it okay that I say the prayers with you rather than Daddy?" And Anne simply denied that. She said, "No, Mommy." Now her mother did not say anything. She just got up. She stood beside her bed for a moment. Stood is the past tense of stand. So she stood next to Anne's bed for a moment and then very slowly she walked to the door. When she was standing at the door, she turned around. Her face was full of pain. So there was a lot of pain on her face. And she said that, "I don't want to be angry with you. I can't make you love me." We've read this above also that Anne had a better relationship, or rather she had a wonderful relationship with her father, and she was always scolded by her mother on one account or other. So her mother felt very bad and she said that, "I feel sad that I cannot make you love me." And when she said that, there were a few tears that rolled down her cheeks. So tears came off her eyes. I lay still, thinking about how cruel I had been. But I could not have answered her any other way. I felt sorry for Mother. But the truth is that she's the one who first rejected me with her cruel jokes. So, Anne obviously did not like it after she saw her mother crying and going away from that room. So she said she was just lying on her bed and she was thinking how cruel she was, how bad, how selfish she was. But she says that there was no other way for me to say no to her. This was the only way to say no. She did feel sorry, but then the truth was that she was the one who rejected me with her cruel jokes. So this line gives us an indication of the kind of relationship that existed between Anne and her mother. So her mother did not, give good answers to Anne when as a kid, when she was growing up. So in her growing years, the mother did not pay much heed to Anne and she would always make jokes on her, and the jokes that were very cruel, that were very rude and hurtful. So that is how their relationship became sour. She cried half the night and did not get any sleep. Father has avoided talking to me, but I can read his unspoken words. How can you be so unkind? How dare you make your mother so sad? Everyone expects me to apologize, but I can't apologize for telling the truth. So she cried half the night. Even Anne Frank, she did not feel good. Obviously, who would feel good after you've seen your parents cry? So she did not like it at all, and she could not sleep the whole night. Her father avoided talking to her, so her father did not talk to her. But she says that I could read his lips. It was easy for her to understand what was going inside the heart and the brain of her father. And she felt that her father was questioning her, that how could you be so rude? How could you be so unkind to your mother? How could you make your mother feel so sad? But Anne tells us that, everybody in the house was expecting that I would say sorry to mom. But she confesses that how could I apologize for telling the truth? Saying sorry for something which was true is obviously, this was not acceptable to her. So next we have the 27th April 1943. Everyone in the annex is quarreling. Everyone is mad at everyone else, mother and I. Mr. Van Dan and father, mother and Mrs. Van Dan. The number of bombings on German cities is increasing every day. We haven't had a good night's rest in so long. It is very tense here. So on 27th April, she tells us that inside annex, the things were not very good. Everybody was quarreling, everybody was fighting with each other, everybody was arguing with each other, everyone was mad at everyone else. So, everybody was mad at one another. Mother and Anne Frank were quarreling, Mr. Van Dan and Anne Frank's father were quarreling, Mrs. Anne Frank and Anne Frank's mother were, Mrs. Van Dan and Anne Frank's mother were quarreling. Moreover, the number of bombings on the German cities were increasing. So the bombs that were being dropped, they also were increasing in number. And the situation was so tense that they had not been able to sleep, well for a very long time. Our food is also terrible. Breakfast consists of plain, unbuttered bread and coffee. For the last 2 weeks, we have been eating vegetables that have a rotten taste. If you are trying to diet, the annex is the place to be. So she tells us about the food that they were getting. It was also terrible. It was very bad. For breakfast, they would only have plain bread along with coffee. And for the last 2 weeks, they've been eating vegetables that were rotten. They were stale. When you eat something which is rotten, you have that taste in that vegetable, so the vegetables were very old and they were stale. And she comments again that if in case you are trying to be on a diet, losing your weight, then please try annex. That is the most appropriate place for you to be. So Saturday, the 1st of May, 1943. Yesterday was Dussel's birthday. At first, he acted as if he did not want to celebrate it. But when Meep arrived with a large shopping bag full of gifts, he was as excited as a little kid. He got eggs, butter, cookies, lemonade, bread, cake, flowers, oranges, chocolate, books and writing paper. He put all his presents on a table and displayed them for 3 days. The silly old goat. So, now the 1st of May was Dussel's birthday. Dussel, that we had read, was that dentist who had come to stay at the secret annex. So, Anne tells us that since it was his birthday, at first he pretended, he showed that he was in no mood to celebrate. But when Meep, again we know Meep is one of those people who worked in Anne's father's office, and he was one of those people who had arranged this secret annex for them. So Meep had arrived with a very big shopping bag which was full of gifts, and looking at those gifts, Dussel became very excited just like a kid. The gifts included eggs, butter, cookies, lemonade, bread, cake, flowers, oranges, chocolate, books and writing paper. He put all those things on the table and he displayed them for 3 days. So he put all those things on the table for 3 days. You know, just like a kid is very excited to show off the things that he or she has, similar was the case with Dussel. And this made Anne call him the silly old goat. So she said that Dussel was just he was a stupid old man, and this is what he did. He already has a lot of food. We found bread, cheese, jam and eggs that he has not shared with us in his cupboard, and to think we shared everything we had with him. So Anne also comments that apart from all these things that Meep had gifted Dussel on his birthday, there were a lot of other food items that were there in Dussel's cupboard, like eggs, bread, cheese, jam. And he does not share those things with anybody else in the secret annex. And Anne comments that we, on the other hand, we share everything that we have with him. So this was very unfair. Sunday, the 13th of June, 1943. Father composed a lovely poem for my birthday. It's about me and the hard life that I am leading in the annex, under the control of parents who are always finding fault with me. It is very funny. The rest have also spoiled me. I received a number of presents, including a big book on my favorite subject, Greek and Roman mythology, and candy. People had to dig into the last of their stores for this. So, 13th of June was Anne Frank's birthday. Her father had written a beautiful poem for Anne Frank, and that poem was about Anne Frank herself and about the difficult life, hard life, the difficult life that they were leading, that they were living in the annex under the control. So she was living a very difficult life with her parents who were always finding faults in her. So that poem was very funny. She found that very hilarious. The rest have also spoiled me. So not only her father, but the other people of the annex also gifted her with something or the other that made her feel very good. She received a number of presents, which included a big book, which was on her favorite subject, that is Greek and Roman mythology, and candy, the toffees, She had received those candies, and she tells us that the people had to dig in the last of their stores for this. Last of their stores means obviously these people, when they had come to live in the annex, there were a lot of things that they had brought along with themselves, and they had stocked that. They brought that in huge numbers, and they had put, that one place or the other. So these people actually had to find, had to spend a lot of time to find this candy for Anne, because obviously they've been living for almost a year now and all their stocks was dried up. So 15th of June 1943, we have to hand over our radio to the authorities. All over the country, people are trying to get hold of an old radio that they can hand over so that they can keep their real radio secretly. Mr. Koophuis has a small set hidden in his home that he is giving us to replace our beautiful big radio. It's against the rules, but what does that matter? We are already breaking the law by staying here. The radio with its wondrous voice helps us not to lose heart. As the reports from outside get worse, we keep telling ourselves, cheer up, keep your spirits high, things have to get better. So, June 15th, she says that we have to hand over the radio to the authorities. The authorities were taking away the radios from the people. All over the country, the people are trying to get hold of an old radio set. So, whatever radios the people had, they were supposed to hand that over to the authorities, to the government. So, obviously, the people needed some alternative, they needed some substitute. So, what did they do? They were finding whatever old radio they had in their house. Obviously, the people of a secret annex were also supposed to do it. But in place of the radio that was taken away from them, they were given a small radio by Mr. Koophuis. So, in place of that big beautiful radio, the small radio was given to them by Mr. Koophuis. But she says that, do you not think it is against the rules? What was against the rules? Taking away something beautiful from the people, something better and bigger from the people, and giving them something very small and irrelevant and very old as well. So she found that very bad. She found that against the rules. But she says, how does it matter? How can we even talk about or comment on rules? Because we are staying in the secret annex, and our living at secret annex in itself is against the rules. So it is better we do not talk about that. So the radio that was given to them had a wondrous voice. Wondrous, it had a very, it had a loud voice that could be heard by all. And that voice helped them to keep them cheerful. She said that according to the reports that could be heard from the radio, the situation outside was getting worse. Okay. And the only thing that they were trying to tell themselves so that they would cheer up is to keep your spirits high. This is something that they would tell to themselves. Cheer up. Keep your spirits high, things have to get better. So they would tell themselves that cheer up, things will get better, keep your spirits high. And this was the only way for them to survive through the sad and depressive days of the secret annex. So my dear students, I'm going to pause here now. We are going to continue with 16th of July from our next session, from our next video. So I'll see you all. Thank you.